feel free to cut this bit out if you'd like to, but I wanted to ask Colm something about what he said. Colm, you said you're uneasy about writers who would, go into a setting like Nazi Germany. And I'm just wondering, is that a literary reservation or a moral one? I'm not sure that question makes sense, but why would you not want to set something in a time and place like that?
It's a moral one. It arose for me most when I attended the trial of the generals of Galtieri and the other dictators in Argentina in 1985. And I sat in the court every day, and all the people who'd been tortured came and gave evidence, and all the people who relatives of those who were murdered came and gave evidence. And it was harrowing, and it was really something that the world needed to know and needed to be made clear. I realized that people were not in Argentina were not really listening, but nonetheless, this was happening. And what to do about this? So I wrote, and I wrote a very long article about it. And then I went back there a few more times, and I realized that it was the aftermath that interested me. That it was the arrival of Alfonsín as elected president of Argentina. People trying to work out, how did I not know this was happening right in front of me? Did I know? Were there enough clues? And people trying to pick up pieces from the thing. But I felt anytime when I read novels that were set in the concentration camps, in the torture places, I felt, no, I need the facts. I don't need any invention here. I don't want to know what people felt. I want to know what happened. I want evidence, evidence, evidence. And I think the same would go for Nazi Germany, for the concentration camps. The idea of going in and imagining something seems to me ethically wrong. Now, artistically, maybe really even more wrong. But maybe I should just say that I couldn't do it. It doesn't mean that it mightn't be done by somebody else, but I would be very, very uneasy about it. And it may be one of the limits of the novel, in that there are times when we need reporters and journalists and historians, and we don't need people coming in to imagine, because in some way or other, well, I suppose I should go as far as I need to go, that imagining something like that, there's an element of fraudulence, of taking something that is in itself sensational, is itself immensely interesting. I mean, it's like I should say that I do have some of the same problems with murder. I did try murder in my last book, but it was set in ancient Greece. But in reading books about murder, or in imagining murder, but this other one is a bigger political thing, and it's a bigger ethical thing that I wonder if attempting to go in to do that is taking advantage of what is itself an intrinsically interesting situation. I mean, people are fascinated by what went on in those places, the enormity of it, the cruelty, the poisonous. And I wonder if just it's our job. It's a really difficult one. I'd love to have someone like Martin Amis on the other side of this who would be able to tell me I'm talking rubbish, because I probably am, but I'm talking personally. I couldn't do it, and I'd be very uneasy about anyone else doing it.
J.M. Coetzee has one of the sections on the Elizabeth Costello is a kind of meditation on exactly this issue. And what gets expressed there is exactly what you're saying now, but with a slightly different center to it, in the sense that there are certain areas you should not imagine, because the imagining of it means you're taking it in some way. You're taking it into yourself. So more than the ethical lapse, I think Coetzee sees it as a kind of moral danger to yourself. In imagining certain acts, you have to understand them, and that means you're kind of evoking or waking up certain elements of your own nature, which it is best not to awaken.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that at all. That part, it is that you're operating. What you're writing is a kind of forgery because you cannot add an imagined person to the real names. But there's something about that. There were if there were 1,150 people and you imagine one more, why would you do that? Since these people's stories have not been told, and
Right.
so I mean, I wouldn't worry about the other thing at all. I mean, taking in evil, for God's sake, I mean, that's a necessary. We spend our lives doing that in one way or another. Um, and but anyway, it's a problem, and I think it's a problem will always be there for novelists.
Well, in a certain sense, sorry, I don't mean to take over this conversation, but I find this thread of it really interesting that what you are doing, in other words, you're finding a scene which is slightly off center that still evokes what has happened, off stage. That's a far more challenging prospect for a writer. So that, in fact, it's easy in a way to evoke emotions in a reader by describing a sensational incident or a really extreme one. It's far harder to evoke those emotions through indirection and obliqueness. Anyway, I'll leave the comment there and get off stage myself.